Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I got two things. One is a little comment, and then a question. The comment is this. Before I came tonight, I called my brother-in-law who worked under you in Manchester. He's a guy who's worked there 26 or 7 years in the water department, runs the water treatment plant. And I asked him about you. He said,
Was it Bob?
no, it was Dave Paris.
Okay.
And he said, well, you know, when he came into office, I didn't think a lot of him. He said, what I saw of him in the 4 years that he was here, I may not have agreed with him all the time, but he was a good man, good family man, and he had a lot of respect for you. So I considering that he comes from the other side of the political aisle from where I come from, I consider that to be high praise. So that's my comment. My question is this. You know, when I was younger, I used to hear all these people talking about old adages. You know, what the hell are these people talking about? You know, I mean, they have these little slogans that they throw out at you. One of them is, you know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that was a Disraeli line, actually. But it brings up the question of earmarks. You know, we as Republicans were seduced by them just as quickly as the Democrats have been seduced by them. It's always a good thing to say, hey, I brought you this thing for the North Country, or I brought you this thing for the seacoast. And the way it's done is in these things that nobody talks about, nobody knows about. They jam them in there, and themselves they're nice little projects. But taken together, they take a huge portion. In the federal government's terms, not that big a portion,
Yes.
but a big enough portion that we need to stop the practice because it's totally it lacks transparency. And it's a reason, like so many of the others we've had in the healthcare bill, that make taxpayers and all people ticked off at their government because they say, how can they do that? And come back to me and tell me how pure as Caesar's wife they are. So I'm asking you, I guess, where you stand on earmarks. And I think we need people who'll stand up and say in unison, we as Republicans ain't doing it anymore. And when we do that, and we do it, we may not be appreciated by the people anymore, but we'll at least be men of principle or women of principle. And the country will be better off. And cynicism will be diminished.
Well, to the first point you made about who's your brother, you said?
My brother-in-law.
Your brother-in-law, okay. I'm glad you brought that, you made that comment about his perception of me over the 4-year period. Because I would tell you there were a lot of people, he was a Republican in a Democrat city, a lot of people when I first took office who probably had that same feeling that he had. And I knew that I wasn't going to get everybody to agree with me all the time. That was not my goal. My goal was to stick to the promises that I made. And hopefully that people would walk away at the end of my tenure and say exactly what your brother-in-law said. He's a good guy. And he probably, and I hope, that he felt he could interact with me and he could talk with me and that I was reasonable. And I say that because listen, the Democrats outnumber Republicans in Manchester. But I didn't compromise my principles to get elected.